Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind, and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight's journey will take us into the quiet whispers of a shared multiverse, a space where familiar moments, forgotten memories, and the hidden architecture of reality brush gently against one another. But before you settle in and get cozy, I'd love if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe, only if you truly find these quiet explorations enjoyable, and when you're ready, leave a comment to let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always such a joy to see all the places we gather from, each in our own little slice of time. Now feel free to dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for a soft background hum, and let's gently begin our journey into the quiet whispers of a shared multiverse. And if your mind begins to wander, that's perfectly fine. Let it drift. We'll still be here, quietly unfolding the story. There are moments in life so small, so delicate, that we usually walk right past them. They slip between thoughts like a faint breeze moving through the curtains. And yet, when we pause long enough to notice, these moments seem to whisper that reality might be a little larger and a little stranger than it appears at first glance. You may have had mornings where you reach for your phone just as someone you were thinking about appears on the screen, as if the thought and the message shared the same quiet thread. Or perhaps you've walked into a room you've never been in before, yet felt an odd, soft certainty that you've stood there in another time, in another version of your life. These gentle peculiarities don't arrive with fanfare. They come softly, like the hush before rain. And for just a moment, the edges of your world seem to blur. These small experiences do not prove anything supernatural, nor do they promise that multiple universes are colliding in your living room. But they do open a door, just a little, to curiosity. And curiosity, especially the quiet kind that arises at night when the world slows down, can lead us into remarkable places. Think of coincidences. They happen to everyone, yet they never lose their ability to surprise. You think of an old friend you haven't spoken to in years, and suddenly their name appears in a message or a memory shared online. You hum a melody you haven't heard since childhood, and later that day it plays in a cafe or drifts out from a passing window. These are not signs of higher powers or hidden forces, not necessarily, but they remind us that our minds are exquisitely tuned instruments, always listening, always weaving connections from the threads of our days. Even numbers can play tricks on us. You glance at the clock, and it reads the same pattern again. 11:11, or something tied to your birthday, or a number you keep noticing without quite knowing why. Some people see these as cosmic nudges, others see them as a gentle quirk of attention, as though your mind, wandering through the quiet spaces of routine, is simply more aware of patterns that feel comforting or meaningful. Whether mystical or mundane, these moments create a soft shimmer on the surface of daily life. And then, of course, there is the feeling of having lived a moment before, a sense so brief and fragile it almost dissolves as soon as you notice it. Déjà vu can feel like a fleeting overlap of two lives, the one you remember and the one you're living now. Scientists see it as a small misfire in the brain's timing, a moment where perception and memory briefly step out of sync, like two echoes arriving at nearly the same instant. But the experience itself feels oddly intimate, as though you are brushing against the edge of something you cannot fully grasp. What makes these oddities special is not whether they are proof of something grand, it is the way they make us pause and look at our world with gentler eyes, wondering, without fear, without urgency. What else might exist just beyond the rim of our understanding? They remind us that we are conscious beings drifting through a universe filled with patterns we notice only when we slow down enough to listen. Even dreams add to this gentle mystery. Sometimes you wake from a dream that feels like a memory borrowed from another life or another version of yourself. Other times the dream feels like a message from a familiar place you cannot name. These experiences quietly reshape the edges of your inner world, expanding the space where imagination and reality meet. When we gather all these small moments together, the coincidences, the repeating numbers, the half-remembered dreams, the sudden waves of familiarity, they begin to form a soft mosaic. Nothing sharp or dramatic, nothing that demands belief or disbelief, just a gentle suggestion that the universe might be deeper and more interconnected than it appears under the bright light of midday. And so this first session invites you to step into the story with a relaxed mind. Whether these oddities arise from the architecture of your brain, the shared patterns of human experience, or the deeper structure of reality itself, they share one thing in common. They invite you to wonder, and wonder is where every quiet journey begins. There is a quiet question that lingers beneath many of our everyday experiences, a question we rarely say out loud because it feels too soft, too subtle, too elusive to hold firmly. Are we, in some hidden way, sharing parts of our reality with others, even when we think we stand entirely alone? Not in the literal sense of merging timelines or exchanging thoughts through invisible channels, but in the gentler sense that our inner worlds may ripple into one another, leaving faint impressions that feel strangely familiar when we encounter them again. Consider those moments when two people, separated by distance, reach for the same thought at the same time. Maybe you and a close friend send each other the same message within seconds, without any signal or cue. Or maybe you both say the same sentence with the same tone, finishing a thought neither of you remembers starting. These are simple, human events, yet they carry an intimacy that can make the world feel smaller, as if minds were quietly brushing against each other like passing currents beneath the surface of a river. Across different cultures, many people describe the sensation of tuning into something shared, an atmosphere, a feeling, a quiet intuition that seems to drift between individuals rather than originate from just one. It might appear during moments of collective joy, like a stadium holding its breath during the final seconds of a game, or during moments of deep sorrow, when millions of people around the world pause together. In these times, the emotional landscape feels almost like a shared field, not confined to any single person. Of course, science explains such phenomena through empathy, social reinforcement, or the way emotions spread through groups. Yet the experience itself can feel like a subtle merging of inner worlds. Even memories can behave in unexpectedly communal ways. There are stories of siblings recalling the same childhood event in almost identical detail, even though those details never truly happened. Entire groups sometimes remember songs, logos, or lines from movies in the same incorrect way. These are not signs of alternate timelines slipping into ours, but reminders that memory is a shared act of storytelling. We borrow from each other, reinforce each other, and shape each other's recollections without realizing it. A memory, after all, is not a photograph. It is more like a painting, retouched each time it is recalled, influenced gently by the stories others share. Dreams, too, offer their own quiet suggestions of a shared inner space. Two friends, without speaking beforehand, may wake having dreamt of the same setting: a beach at dusk, a dim hallway, or a familiar street from their childhood. These similarities do not require mysterious forces. Dreams often draw from universal archetypes, places that feel safe, places that feel uncertain, moments that belong to everyone. But the sensation they produce, when shared aloud in the morning, can feel like glimpsing a soft echo of someone else's inner life, a reflection in a mirror you did not know you were looking into. There are also moments of intuition, those gentle nudges in the mind that arrive without reason. You think of checking on someone and discover they needed you. You change your route home without knowing why, and only later learn that something unexpected happened on the path you avoided. Intuition is not a signal from another dimension. It is the sum of hundreds of subtle cues your mind collects quietly, tones of voice, patterns of behavior, memories stored just below awareness. Yet because this process is silent and invisible, intuition can feel like a whisper from somewhere beyond you. Even in moments of solitude, many people sense a kind of subtle togetherness, a feeling that their thoughts are part of a wider tapestry. It may appear during meditation, when the mind becomes still enough to feel connected to something larger, or during long walks at night, when the world grows quiet and the boundaries between you and everything else soften. This sensation is not evidence of a literal shared consciousness, but it reveals how deeply humans long for connection, how naturally our inner worlds reach outward, searching for meaning beyond the edges of our own thoughts. All these experiences, synchronous thoughts, shared dreams, collective memories, soft intuitions, do not prove that realities overlap or that universes fold into one another. Yet they do suggest that we are not as separate as we imagine. Human consciousness, shaped by emotion, memory, culture, biology, and subtle perception, creates spaces where individual experiences feel intertwined. When enough people encounter these alignments, the world begins to feel as though it carries quiet echoes, as though invisible threads are weaving connections beneath the surface. Science gives clear explanations for each of these moments: psychology, probability, social patterns, memory reconstruction. But science also leaves room for wonder. It acknowledges the remarkable complexity of the brain, the richness of shared human experience, and the enormous tapestry of influences that shape our inner lives. Wonder grows not from breaking the laws of nature, but from realizing how intricate those laws already are. And so, the question remains, softly, gently, not as a problem to be solved, but as a thought to rest alongside. Perhaps we're already sharing small corners of our reality, not through portals or parallel timelines, but through the simple, profound fact that we are human beings sensing, remembering, and dreaming within the same vast and mysterious universe. In these quiet overlaps, something tender and meaningful emerges, inviting us to listen more closely to the subtle currents that pass between us. When we notice these delicate alignments, we're reminded that even in an immense cosmos, our experiences can resonate with one another, like notes drifting from different instruments but joining the same gentle melody. And it is through these soft harmonies that we begin to wonder, without certainty, without haste, whether reality itself might contain more layers of connection than we usually allow ourselves to see. There are few sensations as quiet yet as striking as déjà vu. It arrives without warning, slipping into your awareness like a soft ripple across still water. For a moment, just a moment, you feel as though time has folded, gently, allowing you to stand in two places at once. You know you have never lived this exact moment before, yet your mind whispers, almost shyly, that you have. It is a strange and delicate feeling, the kind that fades as soon as you try to grasp it, leaving behind only the warmth of a mystery you cannot quite explain. Scientists often describe déjà vu as the mind's timing mechanism momentarily stepping out of rhythm. Instead of recording experience first and recognizing it second, the two processes overlap, like two waves arriving almost together. When this happens, the present is misread as a memory, just briefly, before the mind corrects itself. There is no complex formula needed to explain this, no symbols of quantum mechanics or fragments of cosmic notation. It can be understood simply as a soft misalignment in the brain's natural rhythm, as harmless and fleeting as a skipped beat in a familiar song. Another possibility is the dream-based explanation. Many people have dreams filled with ordinary details, streets, rooms, faces, that they forget upon waking. Later, when they walk into a new place or meet someone for the first time, something in the atmosphere echoes a forgotten dream, creating a gentle sense of familiarity. The mind, searching for context, sends a quiet signal. You've seen this before, and even though the memory cannot be found, the feeling remains like a soft afterglow. There is something tender about this. déjà vu reminds us that what we notice in waking life is only a small part of the mind's full landscape. Beneath our conscious thoughts lies a vast storehouse of impressions, emotions, and fragments of dreams. When déjà vu rises from those depths, it feels like a small message from the quieter parts of ourselves, the regions of the mind that whisper instead of speak. Of course, many people have wondered whether déjà vu could be something more than a mental echo. In stories, in myths, and in late-night conversations between close friends, déjà vu is sometimes described as a moment when two paths of reality brush against each other, a faint resonance between different versions of a life. Even though physics does not support this interpretation directly, the idea has a poetic appeal. In a universe filled with possibilities, the sensation of recognizing a moment you have never lived can feel like the gentlest tap from another version of your story. And yet, even when grounded in neuroscience, the experience remains captivating. Imagine the mind as a vast library where every experience is catalogued in real time. Most of the time, the system runs smoothly, placing each moment in its proper place. But every now and then, two librarians may reach for the same shelf at once, and the moment is filed under memory before it has truly been lived. The result is not a supernatural phenomenon, but a tiny, beautiful error, one that makes us wonder about the hidden machinery of our minds. Déjà vu also reveals the mind's deep sensitivity to pattern. Our brains are tuned to recognize repetition, symmetry, and rhythm. When you encounter a scene that resembles something you've felt before, even vaguely, the mind may react by creating a soft bridge between the present and a related sensation. This bridge is fragile but powerful enough to create the impression of reliving the moment. It is less like remembering a past event and more like recalling the emotional shape of a memory, even if the details remain out of reach. What makes déjà vu fascinating is not simply the neurological explanation, but the way it feels. It brings a sudden clarity, as though everything around you is aligned just perfectly. The sounds, the light, the breath you take, all arranged in a harmony too subtle to notice until it sings for a single second. And in that second, you're reminded that your mind is far more complex and layered than you experience day to day. Some people experience déjà vu under stress or fatigue, when the brain is working harder to organize information. Others feel it in peaceful moments, when the mind is open and relaxed. It can happen during travel, during quiet mornings, during long walks, or in the middle of ordinary routines. No matter when it appears, déjà vu gently interrupts the flow of time, creating a pocket of awareness that feels both familiar and mysterious. There are also rare experiences that resemble déjà vu but deepen into something more vivid, sometimes called déjà vécu, already lived. In these moments, a person might feel not only that they've seen the scene before, but that they remember how the moment unfolded, as though recalling a page from a book they once read. These experiences remain within the boundaries of memory science, but they show how layered and intricate the architecture of the mind can be. Whatever its cause, whether a tiny delay in neural pathways, a forgotten dream resurfacing, or a well-tuned sensitivity to patterns, déjà vu gently blurs the line between memory and perception. It reminds us that our experience of reality is not fixed or simple. It is a flowing, ever-shifting tapestry woven from what we sense, what we feel, and what we remember. In the end, déjà vu may not be a doorway to another dimension, nor a signal from a parallel version of yourself, but it remains one of the most delicate invitations to wonder, a reminder that even within the ordinary, something quiet and extraordinary can bloom for a brief moment. And as that moment fades, it leaves behind a soft echo, encouraging you to listen more closely to the subtle ways your mind interacts with the world around you. There are moments when memory behaves not as a precise archive, but as a gentle storyteller. It fills in gaps, softens edges, and sometimes paints details that were never truly there. Most of the time, these changes are small, harmless and invisible. But every so often, a memory becomes so widely shared, so collectively believed, that entire groups recall the same event in the same incorrect way. This is the quiet phenomenon known as the Mandela effect, named after the moment when many people, across different countries, swore they remembered Nelson Mandela passing away in prison decades before he actually died peacefully at home in 2013. The memory felt so real to them, so emotionally complete, that learning the truth brought a strange, almost dizzying sense of disorientation. The Mandela effect does not arrive with fanfare. It moves softly, like a breeze shifting through a room you thought was still. Someone mentions a detail you are certain you remembered correctly, and suddenly the moment shifts. A logo you grew up seeing now looks slightly different. A favourite childhood line from a movie turns out to have been spoken in another way. A book title, a cereal box, a character design, each feels familiar and yet subtly wrong, like the memory of a melody you have not hummed in years. When people gather to compare these memories, something intriguing happens. Groups of strangers discover they all remember the same incorrect detail, not randomly, not in scattered fragments, but in patterns. It is this shared misremembering that gives the phenomenon its haunting charm. How can so many people recall the same version of something that never existed? Why do their minds paint the same picture, even when that picture does not match the world? The scientific explanation is gentle, grounded, and deeply human. Memories are not fixed recordings. They behave more like watercolour paintings, which blur and shift each time you look at them. When you recall a memory, the brain does not simply retrieve it, it rebuilds it. A trace of the moment remains, but your mind fills in the rest using emotion, expectation, and imagination. When someone else shares a similar reconstruction, your mind embraces it, reinforcing the wrong detail until it feels unquestionably real. Social influence also plays its part. Most of us hear about Mandela effect examples from others, and because the brain finds comfort in patterns, it often adopts those details as if they belong to one's own past. Hearing, "Do you remember the cereal box with the little horn?" or "Wasn't that character wearing glasses?" can make your memory gently shift, smoothing itself into alignment with what feels like a familiar shape. The mind prefers coherence. It prefers stories that make sense, and when enough people share the same mistaken memory, it becomes surprisingly easy for yours to settle into the same rhythm. There is also a softer psychological layer at work. Many of the most famous Mandela effect examples involve childhood objects, toys, logos, films, books. These are memories formed when the mind is still learning to interpret the world. Childhood impressions are vivid, but not always detailed. Over time, the small gaps fill themselves in using the logic of imagination, blending fragments of images, sounds, and emotions. Because millions of people grew up exposed to the same cultural patterns, they often fill in those gaps in similar ways. What feels supernatural is often just the gentle echo of shared human experience. Yet, even with a grounded explanation, the Mandela effect still carries a quiet sense of wonder. It makes people pause, tilt their heads, and consider the possibility, however softly, that memory may be connected to something larger, something beyond the individual mind. Not in the literal science fiction sense of timelines folding together, but in the more tender sense that our minds reflect the environments we share, the stories we grow up with, and the emotions we carry together. When someone struggles to reconcile their memory with reality, it is not a sign that two universes have collided. Instead, it is a reminder that memory itself is a living process. It shifts with time, retelling the past in ways that feel right emotionally, even when the details drift. This is not a flaw. It is part of what makes memory so deeply human. Our minds are not machines that store moments with perfect precision. They are instruments shaped by feeling, meaning, and the quiet need to make sense of the world. There is comfort in this understanding. It means that a misplaced memory is not a failure. It is a part of the story your mind is creating with you. And when many people share these misplaced memories, it becomes a sign of how connected we all are, how similar our mental landscapes can be. The Mandela effect becomes less a puzzle to solve and more a window into the tapestry of collective experience. Still, the poetic side of the Mandela effect remains. Even if science explains the mechanics of memory reconstruction, there is something beautiful about the thought that our minds, shaped by culture, emotion, and shared stories, can produce the same patterns without coordinating. It suggests that human perception moves not as isolated islands, but as waves in a larger ocean, rising and falling with a rhythm we all feel, even when we do not realize it. The Mandela effect does not prove alternate realities, but it does reveal something gentle and meaningful. Our memories are tied not just to our personal lives, but to the communities and cultures that hold us. They're shaped by family, by friends, by the stories we hear, and by the quiet ways we influence one another. And in that sense, perhaps in the softest sense of all, we are sharing more of our realities than we think. There is a particular kind of moment that settles softly into a person's life, quiet, unexpected, and strangely meaningful. You think of a friend you have not spoken to in months, and moments later, their message glows on your screen. You open a book at random and find a sentence that echoes a thought you kept to yourself all week. You hear a word for the first time in years, and suddenly it appears everywhere, like a gentle echo following you from room to room. These moments feel like small alignments in the flow of life, faint ripples in a larger pattern that briefly reveal themselves before fading back into the ordinary. Carl Jung called these experiences synchronicities, coincidences that feel meaningful, even though no chain of cause and effect connects them. Jung described them not as magic or supernatural signs, but as moments when an inner state and an outer event seem to mirror each other in a way that feels too elegant to ignore. It is as if the world, just for a heartbeat, reflects your thoughts back to you. Science explains these moments through probability, attention, memory, and pattern recognition, processes that are subtle, intricate, and entirely natural. But the feeling of synchronicity is different from the explanation. It emerges not from logic, but from experience, carrying a soft emotional charge that makes the moment shimmer. The human mind is exceptionally tuned to patterns. From childhood, we learn to recognize rhythms, shapes, and repeated sequences. Our ancestors used these skills to survive, noticing cycles in seasons, stars, and the behavior of animals. Even now in modern life, the brain constantly searches for structure. It tries to link events, to find meaning, to place things in a story that feels coherent and familiar. When two events occur close together, thinking of someone and hearing from them, dreaming of a place and then seeing it the next day, the mind naturally builds a bridge between them, even when none exist in the external world. But what makes synchronicity feel special is not the bridge itself, but the meaning we place upon it. Meaning gives shape to our days, it gives warmth to our relationships and depth to our memories. So when a coincidence feels meaningful, the emotion becomes part of the experience. It is not simply that two unrelated events happened nearby in time, it is that those events touch something within us, an unresolved question, a quiet worry, a gentle hope, and in doing so they feel like part of a larger pattern. Psychologists often explain synchronicity using the idea of selective attention. We encounter thousands of events each day, but our minds notice only a small fraction of them. When something aligns with our thoughts or feelings, we pay attention because it resonates. When it happens again, even distantly, the memory becomes stronger. Before long, a pattern emerges, not because the world changed, but because our awareness sharpened. The mind highlights the coincidences while letting the countless non-coincidences drift past unnoticed. And yet, even with this explanation, synchronicities still carry a unique softness. They are reminders that we are deeply connected to our own inner states, often in ways we do not fully understand. A coincidence may not be a message from the universe, but it is a message from ourselves. Something in the moment mirrors something in us, revealing what we care about, what we fear, what we long for, or what we have yet to resolve. Consider the way emotions tune the mind. When you are anxious, you may notice every warning sign, every negative comment, every confirmation of your worry. When you are in love, the world seems filled with small affirmations of connection. When you are grieving, memories and symbols of the person you lost appear everywhere, not because they suddenly increased, but because your mind has become exquisitely sensitive to them. Synchronicities often arise during moments of transition, when emotions run deeper and the mind becomes more aware of patterns that echo its inner state. There are also cultural patterns at play. Many synchronicities feel shared because people across the world experience similar rhythms in life. Someone starting a new job, entering a relationship, or facing a significant decision may notice similar symbols, stories, or coincidences simply because these moments are universal. The mind recognizes these echoes and shapes them into something that feels personal, even though they belong to a wider human journey. Still, because of their emotional weight, synchronicities can feel eerily precise, as though the world were briefly aligned with your thoughts. It is easy to see why some interpret them as signs or messages. The mind is not only a pattern-seeking organ, it is also a meaning-making one. When a coincidence arrives at the exact moment you need reassurance, or when it reflects something deeply buried in your heart, it feels like a conversation, not a coincidence. A gentle reminder that you are not drifting alone but moving in rhythm with something subtle and familiar. Science does not speak against these emotional truths. Instead, it adds another layer to them. It reminds us that the mind is vast and complex, full of connections we do not consciously perceive. It shows that memory, attention, and emotion intertwine in ways that can create the illusion of external alignment. But it also acknowledges that our subjective experiences, the feelings that arise in response to these coincidences, are valid and meaningful. They are part of the human story, no less real than any physical event. When viewed gently, synchronicity becomes less about cosmic intervention and more about the quiet reflections between mind and world. The world mirrors us because we're always interpreting it, filtering it, shaping it according to our inner landscape. And in those rare moments when the reflection feels precise, when an event seems to echo a private thought, the experience invites us to pause and look more closely at what is stirring within us. Perhaps that is the heart of synchronicity. Not a message from outside, but an invitation from within. A soft reminder that your thoughts, memories, emotions, and quiet hopes form an inner sky filled with its own constellations. Constellations that sometimes appear in the world, around you not by magic, but by the delicate way perception binds your inner life to the outer one. And when you notice these moments, when something small and unexpected aligns with something inside you, it can create a feeling of connection, not to another universe, not to a mysterious force, but to the deeper currents of your own life. In a vast cosmos, uncertain and immense, moments like these bring a sense of nearness, a reassurance that you are part of something woven, something continuous, something quietly meaningful. When you look up at the night sky, it is easy to imagine that what you see, the glittering points of starlight strewn across the darkness, is the whole story. It feels vast, endless, complete. Yet the truth whispered by modern astronomy is far quieter and far stranger. Almost everything that holds the universe together cannot be seen. Not because it is too dim or too distant, but because it does not shine at all. It is invisible, silent, and woven into the very structure of the cosmos like a hidden framework that supports a cathedral you can only perceive from the outside. Scientists sometimes call this framework dark matter, but the name is a little misleading. Dark does not mean dangerous or mysterious in a dramatic way. It simply means unseen. Dark matter does not give off light, does not glow, does not reflect, and does not behave like the familiar atoms that form stars, planets, and people. Instead, it moves quietly through the universe, shaping galaxies with a kind of gravity we feel but cannot observe directly. If normal matter is the paint on the canvas of the cosmos, dark matter is the canvas itself, holding everything steady while remaining hidden in the background. Astronomers discovered its presence not through equations full of symbols or by observing strange cosmic anomalies, but by noticing something deeply intuitive. Galaxies were spinning too fast. With only the visible stars and gas, they should have flown apart, scattering themselves into space. Yet they held together gracefully. Something unseen was providing the necessary pull, as though a soft net surrounded each galaxy, keeping everything in place. This invisible pull did not come from black holes or distant stars. It came from something else entirely, something silent, but strong enough to sculpt the architecture of the universe. Dark matter creates halos around galaxies, gentle cocoon-like structures that cradle billions of stars. Without it, the majestic spirals we admire in photographs would unravel. The cosmic web, the vast network of filaments and clusters stretching across the universe, would never have formed its delicate threads. Even the Milky Way, our home, owes its shape and stability to this unseen companion. And yet, dark matter is still not the whole story. While it holds the universe together, another unseen force pushes it apart. Astronomers call this second ingredient dark energy, though the term is again more poetic placeholder than precise description. Dark energy is the gentle pressure behind the universe's expansion. It does not act like wind or heat or magnetism. Instead, imagine space itself slowly stretching, like a soft fabric being pulled from all sides at once. Galaxies drift away from one another, not because they are moving through space, but because the space between them is quietly expanding. This expansion is not violent or sudden. It is slow, smooth, and patient. So patient that for billions of years no one knew it was happening. But when astronomers measured the light from distant supernovas, they found something unexpected. The universe wasn't just expanding, the expansion was speeding up, as though a gentle outward pressure permeated every corner of existence. That pressure is what we call dark energy, and it now appears to make up most of everything that exists. It is a strange thought. The stars, planets, gas, and dust, the entire visible universe, account for only a tiny fraction of reality. The rest, the overwhelming majority, is made of things we cannot see, cannot touch, and cannot directly detect. But their effects are everywhere, quietly shaping the cosmos we inhabit. There is something humbling in this revelation. It tells us that the universe is not built from the parts that glitter, but from the parts that remain unseen. Reality, in its grandest form, is not loud or obvious. It is subtle, it is soft, and it leaves its fingerprints on the things we can observe. The motion of galaxies, the clustering of stars, the stretching of space. Even though dark matter and dark energy are often described with scientific language, they can be imagined in ways that feel beautifully simple. Picture dark matter as a shadowy scaffolding giving galaxies their form. Picture dark energy as the quiet breath of the universe, expanding its chest ever so gently. No exotic symbols are needed, no hard-to-read formulas, just images of balance, of tension, of forces working in harmony to shape the cosmos. These invisible components also remind us that seeing is only one way of knowing. The universe often reveals itself not in direct light, but in the subtle behaviour of things: a galaxy moving too fast, a cluster of stars bending light in a way that cannot be explained by visible mass alone, a faint stretching in the fabric of space that can only be measured by observing distant starlight. From these silent clues, scientists piece together a picture of a universe far richer than the one we meet with our eyes. Dark matter and dark energy do not speak in the language of brightness or colour. They speak through influence, soft, persistent, and profound. Their existence suggests that reality may be filled with layers we have barely begun to touch. And if 95% of the universe is invisible, then perhaps our understanding of existence is still in its infancy, still learning to listen to the quiet hints that lie beneath the surface. In a way, dark matter and dark energy invite us into a deeper kind of imagination. Not fantasy, but a soft openness to the idea that the universe is larger, more intricate and more mysterious than our senses alone can reveal. They whisper that discovery does not always come from looking harder at what shines, but from noticing the gentle tug of what does not. And as you imagine these invisible forces, one holding the cosmos together, the other guiding its expansion, you might feel a quiet wonder blooming within you. The universe is not an empty void sprinkled with stars. It is a living structure, woven from threads of both light and shadow, shaped by forces that move silently through the dark. And in that silence, there is a beauty that feels almost like a lullaby, a reminder that even the unseen can cradle us in ways we're only beginning to understand. When we imagine the universe, we often picture scattered stars drifting through a vast empty darkness. But if you could step back, far beyond any galaxy, far beyond any cluster, and look at the cosmos on its larger scale, you would see something astonishing. The universe is not scattered at all. It is arranged in a delicate lace-like structure that stretches across unimaginable distances. This is the cosmic web, a network of glowing threads, immense voids, and shimmering intersections where galaxies gather like lanterns in the night. The cosmic web is not visible to the eye, of course. You could look through a telescope for a lifetime and never see its shape. But when astronomers combined thousands of observations over decades, a pattern slowly emerged. Galaxies were not floating randomly. They were following a kind of ancient blueprint, settling into long filaments, clustering at vast crossroads, and leaving behind enormous regions of emptiness between them. It was as though the universe carried a memory of a sound so old and so quiet that only its pattern remained. At the heart of this pattern lies a remarkable idea, that the earliest moments of the universe left behind tiny ripples, like the faint vibrations that remain after a bell has stopped ringing. These ripples, gentle and nearly invisible, influenced where the first clouds of matter gathered. Over billions of years, those tiny ripples guided the formation of galaxies, clusters, and the threads of the cosmic web. Scientists call these ancient ripples acoustic waves, but the term sounds more dramatic than it needs to. You can imagine them simply as soft pulses of pressure moving through the newborn universe, shaping the world long before stars were born. Even today, the shape of the cosmic web carries the imprint of those early pulses. Like the rings that spread from a pebble dropped into a pond, these primordial waves left behind a subtle spacing among galaxies. Astronomers can still measure that spacing, finding that galaxy clusters tend to sit at certain distances from each other, echoing the ancient rhythm. It is a rhythm that predates planets, predates starlight, predates atoms as we know them. It is one of the oldest patterns in existence, a quiet memory woven into the structure of space itself. If you could drift through this cosmic web, you would feel as though you were travelling inside a great glowing tapestry. Filaments of galaxies would stretch out before you in astonishing lengths, hundreds of millions of light years long, while vast voids would yawn open between them, silent and nearly empty. These voids are not small pockets of darkness, but immense regions where there are hardly any galaxies at all. And yet, the emptiness is part of the pattern. Without the voids, the filaments would have nowhere to form. The web requires both presence and absence, structure and openness, in a balance as old as time. The cosmic web also tells us something profound about the universe. It is not chaotic. Even on the grandest scale imaginable, there is order, soft, patient, and elegant. Galaxies gather where the web is dense, forming vast clusters like luminous cities. They spiral and dance around one another, held by the invisible pull of dark matter which we explored earlier. Between the threads of the web, dark energy stretches space ever so gently, encouraging the expansion that keeps the cosmic tapestry in motion. Yet the web is not fixed. It grows slowly, changing shape as galaxies migrate along its threads. Over billions of years, clusters drift toward the densest intersections, forming cosmic nodes where thousands of galaxies converge. These nodes are like the beating hearts of the cosmic web, gathering more matter over eons, building complexity from a structure that began as a whisper in the early universe. There is something strangely comforting about this cosmic architecture. It shows that the universe, despite its immense size and cold emptiness, follows a kind of natural harmony. Even the larger structures move with a rhythm, following the faint traces left behind by the universe's earliest moments. The web is not simply a collection of galaxies. It is a quiet story about how everything in existence is connected, not by forceful design, but by subtle, ancient influences. When astronomers discovered the cosmic web, many described a sense of awe, not simply because of its size, but because of its beauty. The universe, at its deepest level, resembles the patterns we find in the natural world around us. Branching rivers, lightning paths, neural networks. These similarities are not evidence of hidden magic, but rather reflections of how structure tends to form in complex systems. Still, noticing the resemblance can inspire a gentle wonder, reminding us that patterns emerge everywhere, from the smallest cells in our bodies to the grandest filaments of the cosmos. The cosmic web also offers a soft lesson about perspective. When we look at a single galaxy, it may seem isolated and alone, but when we zoom out far enough, we see that each galaxy is part of a vast network connected by threads of matter stretching farther than we can imagine. In much the same way, our own lives can sometimes feel solitary, like individual points scattered across an empty landscape. But zooming out, emotionally, mentally, can reveal the quiet connections we share with others, shared dreams, shared memories, shared hopes. The web reminds us that isolation is often an illusion. Connection exists even when we do not see it directly. It exists between galaxies, between stars, and between human beings moving through their own journeys. Sometimes the links are visible, sometimes they lie hidden, like the dark matter that holds the cosmic web together. But even unseen, they shape our paths in ways we may not fully understand. In the end, the cosmic web is not just a physical structure. It is a quiet symbol of how the universe organizes itself, how it remembers its beginnings, and how patterns persist across unimaginable distances and timescales. It shows that the simplest ripples can become grand tapestries, that subtle forces can sculpt entire galaxies, and that the universe carries its history within its very shape. And as you imagine these glowing threads stretching across the darkness, gently binding billions of worlds, you may feel a small echo within yourself, a sense that simplicity can lead to great beauty, and that even the faintest influences can weave together something extraordinary. When we look at the universe through telescopes designed to capture ancient light, we're not just seeing stars or galaxies, we are looking at a memory. This memory is called the cosmic microwave background, the faint glow left from when the universe was young, filled with light so soft and evenly spread that it now arrives to us as a gentle background warmth the same in every direction. It is like listening to the quiet hum of a distant song, one that has been playing for nearly 14 billion years. But even this ancient glow, smooth as it seems, contains subtle irregularities, tiny temperature variations so slight that they require extremely sensitive instruments to detect. These variations are not random. They are patterns left over from the earliest ripples in the universe, the same soft pulses that helped shape the cosmic web we explored earlier. When scientists map these faint temperature differences, they often describe the image as a patchwork of blues and reds, not because the universe is actually coloured that way, but because the colours help us visualise the tiny fluctuations in warmth. Most of these variations make perfect sense. They match what we expect from the early universe's behaviour. Yet among this tapestry of gentle patterns, there are a few features that stand out. Features that seem just a little too pronounced, too aligned, or too unusual. One of these is something astronomers call the cold spot. It is a region in the cosmic, microwave background that is slightly cooler than the surrounding areas, not cold in any everyday sense, but cooler by a tiny fraction of a degree, an amount so small that it would go unnoticed by any human sense. And still, it is remarkable because it stretches across a surprisingly large patch of sky, larger than most models predict. There are gentle, grounded explanations for this. Perhaps the cold spot is simply the result of chance, a natural fluctuation that happened to be more prominent than usual. The universe is vast, and even unusual things can appear when you look across billions of light years. Another possibility is that the cold spot might be influenced by a massive region of relatively empty space, a supervoid lying between us and that part of the cosmic microwave background. If light passes through such an empty region, it can stretch slightly, losing a bit of energy along the way. This could create the cooler signature we observe. But the cold spot also invites more imaginative thoughts. Some have wondered whether such an unusual feature could hint at interactions with another universe, perhaps a subtle bruise in the fabric of the sky left over from a collision long ago. This idea is not part of established science, but rather one of those soft speculative musings that arise when we encounter something we do not yet fully understand. It carries a poetic appeal, the idea that our universe might have brushed against another, leaving a quiet fingerprint behind. Another curious pattern in the cosmic microwave background is what some call the cosmic alignment, or the axis of evil. This phrase sounds far more dramatic than the phenomenon itself. It refers simply to the observation that certain large-scale temperature patterns appear to line up along similar directions, rather than being randomly distributed. The alignment is faint and subtle, barely noticeable without mathematical tools to analyse the data. And even then, many scientists believe it may be the result of the way we process and filter data from the sky. Slight artifacts, small systematic effects, or even residual interference from our own galaxy could create the illusion of alignment where none truly exists. Still, it is difficult not to be struck by the poetic nature of the observation. Imagine the entire sky, ancient light stretched across all directions, and within it, a suggestion of order, as if the universe had brushed strokes across the canvas with a gentle, deliberate hand. The alignment may simply be a statistical artifact, but the feeling it creates is one of quiet intrigue, a soft question whispered by the cosmos. Why here? Why this direction? Why this subtle repetition? The beauty of these anomalies lies not in whether they prove anything mystical, but in how they remind us that the universe still holds mysteries. Even with modern instruments and sophisticated models, there are places where our understanding feels incomplete, as though the cosmos were a vast story with chapters still sealed. The cold spot and the cosmic alignments do not challenge the foundations of our knowledge, but they do encourage a gentle humility. They remind us that we are still students of the universe, listening carefully to a language we are only beginning to translate. In a bedtime moment, these anomalies can be imagined as faint fingerprints on an ancient lantern. The lantern itself glows steadily, illuminating the darkness, but here and there you see smudges, wisps, small imperfections that make you pause. These marks do not reveal their origins, but they add character to the light. They remind you that even a primordial glow nearly as old as time carries hints of a story far deeper than one moment. The cold spot, whether the result of a supervoid, a cosmic coincidence, or an artifact of our instruments, invites contemplation. It is a tiny, gentle reminder that the universe is not uniform. It has moods, textures, and irregularities, much like the surface of a calm lake. When the lake is perfectly still, a single ripple feels significant. In the same way, when the early universe is almost perfectly smooth, a single cooler region feels like a whisper worth listening to. The cosmic alignments too offer a soft lesson. Patterns can appear even where none were intended. The human mind, as we explored earlier, cherishes order and meaning. When we see alignment across the sky, our thoughts drift toward purpose, harmony, intention. And yet, the truth may simply be that the tools we use to peer into the ancient past occasionally nudge the data into shapes that resemble patterns. Still, the wonder remains. In the end, whether these strange signatures are cosmic coincidences or hints of deeper truths, they add to the quiet poetry of the universe. They tell us that even the oldest light carries secrets. They whisper that the cosmos is not a finished painting, but a living canvas filled with places where the brushstrokes blur. And as we drift among these gentle mysteries, we learn not just facts about the universe, but something softer. That curiosity, wonder, and a willingness to listen closely can transform even the faintest irregularity into a moment of profound reflection. If you imagine the universe as a grand ballroom, filled not with people but with particles, you might picture each one moving alone, following its own quiet path. But deep in the physics of the very small, there is a stranger, more delicate kind of behaviour. Sometimes two particles become linked in such a way that, no matter how far they drift apart, they behave as if they still remember each other. It is as though they once danced together and carry that shared choreography with them forever. This is what scientists call quantum entanglement, though you do not need the term to feel its quiet strangeness. Entanglement does not mean telepathy. It does not mean that information is racing faster than light from one place to another. Instead, it means that when two particles are created together or interact very closely, their properties become part of a single, shared story. You can think of it as writing two characters into the same sentence. Even if you later turn the page and find them in different chapters, they are still bound by the way the story was first written. Their fates are not separate. They are part of one joint description. In everyday life, when we talk about objects, we talk as if each one has its own list of traits, its position, its speed, its colour, its shape. But in the quantum world, there are times when that is no longer true. Instead of saying particle A is like this and particle B is like that, the only honest way to describe them is to say the pair together is in a certain state. That shared state is not simply the sum of two separate pieces. It is something that belongs to the pair as a whole, like two notes forming a chord that cannot be reduced to either note alone. When physicists test entanglement in the laboratory, they find something remarkable. If they measure one particle, the outcome is not known in advance. It comes out according to the quiet rules of quantum chance. But once that outcome appears, the measurement of the other particle, no matter how far away it has travelled, will be correlated in just the right way to preserve the shared story they began with. It is like flipping two coins that always land in opposite ways. If one is heads, the other will always be tails, even though neither was decided until the moment you looked. This behaviour troubled many great thinkers. It seemed to suggest that something was missing from our understanding, that perhaps there were hidden details secretly arranging the results. Over time, careful experiments showed that no simple hidden script could explain the effect. The universe was not cheating behind the scenes with extra instructions. Instead, it appeared that the deep structure of reality allows for connections that are not limited by distance in the way our everyday instincts might expect. Not messages, not signals, but relationships. Entanglement has inspired more than just scientific curiosity. For many people, it feels like a metaphor for connection itself. If particles, the tiniest building blocks of matter, can remain linked across space, then perhaps connection is more fundamental than separation. Of course, it is important to be gentle with this analogy. Entanglement does not mean our thoughts are directly entangled with distant minds, or that our emotions can leap across the universe the way light does. But as a symbol, it reminds us that some relationships are rooted so deeply in their origin that distance cannot quite erase their imprint. In recent years, entanglement has moved from a curious concept to a practical tool. Scientists are exploring ways to use it for ultra-secure communication, for new kinds of computing, and for probing the very foundations of space and time. To do this, they work with careful setups of lasers, crystals, and detectors, coaxing delicate quantum states into existence and protecting them from the noisy environment around them. The very need for such protection tells you something important. Entanglement is exquisitely fragile. The slightest interaction with the outside world can break the shared state, like a whisper lost in a crowded room. This fragility adds another layer to its quiet beauty. Entangled particles are like twins who must remain undisturbed to keep their strange synchrony. Once the world presses in too strongly, their shared story dissolves into ordinary separate behaviour. In the language of physics, this soft unravelling is called decoherence, but you can think of it more simply as the moment when a delicate connection, exposed to too much attention, fades back into the background noise of reality. Despite this fragility, the existence of entanglement tells us that the universe is capable of what might be called holistic behaviour. Sometimes the whole really is more than the sum of its parts. The state of the pair cannot be reduced to individual pieces without losing something essential. And that idea, though abstract, has inspired visions of reality in which connections, relationships, and patterns are just as fundamental as objects themselves. It is from this strange territory that some of the more imaginative ideas about multiple realities and shared universes emerge. If tiny particles can be connected in ways that defy simple pictures of separate objects, then perhaps the entire universe exists in a vast interconnected state, one in which many possible outcomes coexist in a delicate balance before settling into the single world we experience. Entanglement does not prove this grand vision, but it opens the door to it. It shows that the fabric of reality is more flexible, more subtle, and more layered than our everyday senses reveal. As you lie back and picture two particles drifting apart, yet remaining bound by a shared invisible pattern, you might feel a small shift in how you see the world. Perhaps separation is not the default condition of things. Perhaps connection is written into the universe at levels far too quiet for us to notice most of the time. And in that thought, there is a calm kind of comfort. There is a quiet thought, whispered at the edge of modern physics, that invites us to see reality not as a single, unbroken line, but as a vast garden filled with countless paths. Most of the time, we walk one path without ever glimpsing the others, yet according to one of the boldest ideas in quantum theory, those other paths may still exist, branching gently away from us with every choice, every chance event, and every trembling possibility. This idea is called the many worlds interpretation, not a final answer, not a proven truth, but a softer vision of the universe as something richer and more layered than our senses can perceive. To understand where this idea comes from, imagine the world at its smallest scales, where particles behave like waves of possibility rather than tiny solid objects. When a particle exists in several possible states at once, several possible positions, several possible energies, it is described by a wave of probabilities, often called a wave function. Rather than picturing this wave as a technical expression, you can imagine it as a small cloud of possibilities drifting through space, holding every potential outcome in a delicate balance. When we observe a particle, when we shine light on it, or measure one of its properties, something strange happens. In the traditional view, the cloud of possibilities collapses into a single outcome, like a coin settling on one side after spinning through the air. But the many worlds interpretation suggests something gentler, almost dreamlike. Instead of collapsing, the cloud divides. Every possibility unfolds, but each one unfolds in its own branch of reality. Instead of one world choosing, many worlds continue forward, each holding one version of the outcome. If you imagine these branches as paths in a garden, you might picture the universe as a living landscape, where every moment of uncertainty becomes a fork in the trail. When a particle's behavior has two possible outcomes, the universe quietly accommodates both, letting each exist along its own branch. And because everything in the universe is made of particles, stars, oceans, animals, and human beings, the branching does not stop at the level of the microscopic. It ripples upward, gently touching the larger world. This does not mean, though, that we feel ourselves splitting or drifting into different realities. Each branch contains its own version of events, its own version of us, unaware of the counterparts walking through the other paths. The structure is not chaotic, nor is it dramatic. It is serene, continuous, and mathematically consistent in a way that appeals to many physicists who appreciate the simplicity of letting the wave of possibilities evolve without interruption. In this vision, the universe never forces a single outcome. Instead, it allows every possible outcome to bloom, like flowers opening along different trails. The world you experience is simply one blossom among countless others, each equally real, each equally quiet, each following its own gentle unfolding. To some people, the many worlds interpretation sounds like science fiction. The idea of multiple versions of oneself, each living out different choices, seems too dramatic to take seriously. But the concept does not arise from imagination alone. It comes from the equations that describe quantum behavior, equations that work flawlessly when they are allowed to evolve naturally, without adding any rule that forces the wave of possibilities to shrink into a single point. Rather than asking why a collapse happens, Many Worlds simply removes the collapse entirely and lets the wave continue its story. A common misunderstanding is that this interpretation allows communication between branches, or that one version of a person could peek into the life of another. But the branching is gentle and complete. Once two paths diverge, they no longer interact. Each one holds all the ingredients of a full reality, with stars that shine, atoms that bond, and conscious beings who never realize they are part of a larger garden. There is no way, even in principle, for the branches to rejoin, because each branch carries its own unique pattern of details that prevent them from overlapping again. Yet there is something strangely comforting in the idea, even if one embraces it only as metaphor. It suggests that the universe is generous with possibilities, that nothing is wasted, that even paths we did not take continue somewhere, carried by versions of ourselves who face the same turning points but made different choices. This does not diminish the life we live. If anything, it highlights the preciousness of experience. Out of all the countless branches, this is the one we walk. This is the version of life we feel, moment by moment, breath by breath. The many worlds interpretation also reframes the idea of uncertainty. In everyday life, uncertainty often feels like a lack of control or a place of confusion. But in the quantum garden, uncertainty is simply an opening, an invitation for reality to unfold in multiple ways. Each uncertainty becomes a branching of the path, a quiet expansion of the universe's story. The unknown is not empty, it is full. There are physicists who disagree with this view. Some prefer interpretations that preserve a single, unified world. Others propose that hidden interactions or deeper mechanisms shape the outcomes in ways we have not yet discovered. The debate is not settled, and perhaps it never will be. But the many worlds interpretation remains one of the most peaceful and imaginative ways to understand the quantum world, a way that transforms the complicated mathematics into a vision of serene multiplicity, where the universe is not a narrow corridor, but a vast meadow with many winding trails. When you picture this meadow, you might imagine a version of yourself far away, standing at a crossroads you once faced long ago, choosing the other direction. Or you might imagine that every moment you hesitated, every possibility you wondered about, continued softly in another branch. These are not facts we can observe, but they are gentle illustrations of how the theory imagines reality. And even if you embrace it only as a metaphor, it offers a tender way to reflect on your own life, the delicacy of choice, the beauty of possibility, and the quiet way the universe allows many stories to unfold at once. In this calm vision of branching realities, nothing is wasted, nothing is erased, and nothing is forced into a single shape. The universe simply unfolds, allowing every path its own place in the garden. And you, walking your particular path, carry the awareness that possibility is not a threat or a burden, but a soft reminder of how rich reality might truly be. If you imagine the universe the way we normally picture it, 3 dimensions of space stretching outward in all directions, with time flowing like a quiet river, you might feel as though you have captured the full shape of reality. But according to some of the most imaginative theories in modern physics, the universe may have far more layers than the senses can detect. These layers do not shimmer or glow, they do not appear in the night sky. Instead, they hide gently beneath the fabric of space itself, like pages in a book so thin and tightly pressed together that you can only see the single page you live upon. One of the softest and most beautiful ways to imagine this deeper structure comes from string theory. In this vision, the tiniest building blocks of the universe are not particles at all but tiny vibrating strings, so small that no microscope could ever reveal them. Each vibration plays a different note, like strings on a musical instrument. A low, slow vibration might appear as one type of particle, while a quick, energetic one might appear as another. Rather than thinking of symbols or equations, you can imagine the universe as a grand symphony made of countless invisible strings, each contributing its own tone to the great cosmic harmony. But strings alone are only part of the picture. In the broader framework called M-theory, these strings can stretch, fold, and connect to create higher dimensional surfaces called branes, short for membranes. You can imagine a brane as a vast sheet floating in an enormous ocean of dimensions we cannot sense. Our entire universe, every star, every atom, every breath you have ever taken, might live on just one of these sheets. From within it, we see only the 3 dimensions available to us, like ants walking across a piece of paper who never realize there might be an entire volume of space just above or below them. In this quiet ocean of hidden dimensions, there may be many branes drifting side by side, each carrying its own universe. Some might be close to ours, just a hair's breadth away in a direction we cannot perceive. Others might be far across the higher dimensional sea. And some theories gently suggest that these branes may sometimes brush against each other, like pages in a book turning too quickly. One such idea is called the ekpyrotic model, which imagines that the beginning of our universe, the moment we call the Big Bang, was not an explosion from a single point, but a spark released when 2 branes collided. The collision would have filled our brain with energy, lighting up the cosmos and setting time into motion. You do not need to imagine complicated diagrams to picture this. Instead, think of two sheets of silk drifting toward one another in a slow, graceful dance. When they finally touch, the contact sends ripples through the fabric. Those ripples, in this model, become galaxies, stars, and eventually the tiny world we call home. If this imagery feels soft and dreamlike, that is because the theory itself invites a sense of wonder. It does not claim that brain collisions are certain, only that they are possible within the mathematics that describe higher dimensional space. And just as the many-worlds interpretation offers a wide meadow of branching paths, the brain picture offers a quiet ocean of parallel universes, each resting on its own floating sheet. The idea of brains leads to a gentle question. If space itself can have layers, if entire universes can exist just a whisper away in unseen dimensions, what might this mean for the nature of experience? We cannot step from one brain to another. We cannot send messages or glimpse the stars that shine in neighbouring universes. But the concept encourages us to think of reality as something broader than what meets the eye. It suggests that the universe we know may be part of a larger structure, woven from many layers, each shaped by its own history. In this layered vision of reality, distance becomes a more fluid concept. Two universes might be unimaginably far apart in the dimensions we understand, yet close in a direction we cannot sense. It is like living on the surface of a lake, believing the world is only two-dimensional because you can move forward, backward, left, and right, but never up. Creatures swimming just above you would remain invisible, not because they are far, but because they live in a part of the world your senses cannot reach. There is something soothing in this idea. It tells us that the unknown is not necessarily empty. It may simply be beyond the range of the senses we evolved to use in our own small corner of the cosmos. Instead of imagining the universe as a single, solitary bubble floating in nothingness, the brain model invites us to picture a soft stack of realities, more like a quiet library than a cold void. Of course, these ideas remain speculative. They cannot be confirmed at our current level of technology. They live at the boundary between theoretical physics and philosophical imagination. Yet they are grounded in real attempts to unify the laws of nature, to connect gravity, space, time, and the quantum world into a single coherent story. And even if these theories are not ultimately the way the universe works, they still offer a beautiful metaphor for the richness of reality. They remind us that what we perceive is only one layer among many, that the universe might hold structures and stories we have not yet learned to hear, and that existence, in all its quiet complexity, may be far larger than the small slice of reality that meets our eyes. As you imagine these floating sheets, these brains, drifting through a higher dimensional ocean, you might feel a gentle sense of perspective settling over you. The universe is vast, layered, and mysterious. Yet here you are, a part of one shimmering sheet among many, living your own unique story within the grand unfolding fabric of existence. When night falls and your thoughts begin to loosen, your mind steps into a different kind of landscape. It is a place made not of physical objects, but of memories, emotions, fragments of stories, and subtle impressions gathered throughout the day. In this dim and shifting world, the ordinary rules of reality blur and soften. You may find yourself walking through a street you know and yet have never seen, speaking to someone who feels familiar but whose face keeps changing, or living a moment that feels so vivid and meaningful that you carry its echo long after waking. This quiet inner world is what we call dreaming, a realm of both mystery and deep natural simplicity. During a stage of sleep known as REM, short for rapid eye movement, your brain becomes unusually active. Neurons fire in patterns similar to those of waking life, though they are shaped by emotion more than by logic. Scientists sometimes describe this stage as a night theatre, where your mind projects images, sounds and sensations drawn from your inner storehouse. Instead of watching the outside world, your brain watches itself. It recombines pieces of memory, imagination, and feeling into scenes that may be strange or familiar, chaotic or peaceful, delightful or unsettling. Why do these dreams so often feel like alternate lives? Why do they sometimes feel like stepping into another version of yourself, one who makes different decisions, speaks differently, or moves with a confidence or sadness you do not always feel in waking hours? Part of the answer lies in how dreams use memory. They do not replay events as recordings. Instead, they weave emotional impressions into new forms. You might dream of being in your childhood home, not because the dream is recreating the past, but because the feelings connected to that place rise to the surface. Feelings of safety, longing, nostalgia, or unresolved questions. Your dreaming mind uses the symbols it knows best, arranging them into scenes that express what you're processing in silence. But there is also a softer, more poetic explanation for why dreams feel like different lives. In dreams, you're freed from the constraints of identity. You can move through the world as you once were, or as you might be, or as someone halfway between the two. This fluidity can feel like slipping into a parallel self, a version of you shaped not by external circumstance, but by the quiet wishes, fears, and memories that drift beneath your awareness. These dream selves are not literal counterparts from other universes, but reflections, like faces seen through rippling water, recognizable and yet subtly changed. Sometimes people report dreams that seem to overlap with those of others, or dreams that include symbols shared across families, cultures, or even strangers. This phenomenon does not require hidden dimensions to explain. Human beings share many of the same experiences: love, loss, hope, uncertainty. Across cultures, people dream of falling, flying, wandering hallways, losing their voice, being chased, discovering hidden rooms. These motifs arise not because minds are connected across worlds, but because minds are built from the same architecture, shaped by biology, emotion, and the deep patterns of human life. Still, the feeling of sharing a dream, or dreaming of a place that someone else later describes, can be hauntingly beautiful. It hints at the possibility of a shared inner landscape, a subtle connection, not of telepathy, but of common humanity. In this sense, dreams help us understand that our personal experiences are never entirely separate. They come from similar roots, shaped by similar forces, even when our individual paths diverge. There are also dreams that feel prophetic, not because they reveal the future, but because they reveal something about ourselves that we had not yet acknowledged. You might dream of a decision long before you consciously make it, or dream of a person before they become important in your life. These dreams do not predict events, but they may reflect desire, fear, intuition, or subconscious observation. The dreaming mind notices patterns you overlook during the day, storing them quietly until the night when they rise in symbolic form. This quiet wisdom does not rely on supernatural foresight. It is simply the mind working in its own language, one made of images rather than words, emotions rather than logic. Dreams offer a glimpse into how you are changing, what you're longing for, and what you may need to face. They are mirrors, not portals. But even a mirror can feel like a window when the reflection surprises you. There are rare moments when a dream feels so real, so immersive, that waking from it feels like returning from another existence. It may take minutes for the boundaries of identity to settle back into place. You might remember the emotions of the dream more vividly than the details, as if you had stepped into a life that was shaped from the same core of self but arranged differently. These experiences can stay with you for days, quietly influencing your thoughts or helping you understand hidden corners of your heart. In many cultures, dreams have long been seen as messages from the ancestors, from the spirits, from the universe. Science views them differently, not as messages, but as reflections of the brain's internal processes, And yet, both perspectives carry a sense of reverence. Both acknowledge that dreams reveal something meaningful, even if we interpret them in different ways. Perhaps dreams matter not because they show us other worlds, but because they show us ourselves from angles we do not see while awake. So when you wake from a dream that feels like a glimpse of another self, you need not decide whether it was real in the literal sense. Instead, you can let it rest gently in your memory like a small luminous stone. The dream is part of you. It is shaped by your thoughts, your feelings, your quiet inner work. And whether it resembles a path you never took or a life you never lived, it carries a soft truth. Within you lies a vast landscape of possibility, a place where imagination and memory weave together to show you what you might become. In this sense, dreams are not parallel universes, but reminders that your inner world is larger than you know. A reminder that you are made of many layers. A reminder that there are countless versions of you, not in distant realities, but within the deep, shifting rooms of your own mind. There are moments in life when a quiet feeling rises within you, so gentle you might almost dismiss it, yet so clear you cannot quite ignore it. You think of calling someone for no particular reason, and later discover they needed comfort. You hesitate before stepping into a street, only to watch a bicycle rush past the spot where you would have been. You change your route home without knowing why, and learn later that something unexpected happened along the way you avoided. These moments do not arrive with explanation. They arrive like soft ripples under calm water, nudging you toward or away from something with no obvious cause. We call this intuition, a sense of knowing that does not come from deliberate reasoning, but from a deeper, quieter layer of the mind. Intuition is not magic, nor is it a supernatural whisper from beyond the boundaries of time. It is more like the mind's subtle ability to gather information without announcing it, to notice patterns without translating them into words. Beneath your conscious awareness, your brain takes in countless details, tones of voice, changes in posture, shifts in the weather, memories from years ago, patterns from your daily routines. These fragments do not form a clear story until something in you reacts, a faint tug, a hesitation, a curiosity. And in that moment, intuition speaks in its own soft language. You might think of intuition as the mind's early warning system, one that operates not through logic, but through gentle, associative connections. For example, when you walk into a place and feel instantly uneasy, it may not be because anything is wrong. It may simply be that something in the environment matches a pattern your mind learned long ago. Too dim lighting, too quiet a room, a layout that resembles somewhere you once felt unsafe. Your brain remembers these patterns even when you do not consciously think about them. When it senses a similarity, it sends a subtle signal, not as a clear message but as a feeling. Because intuition operates without words, it often feels mysterious. It can seem as though the thought or feeling came from outside you rather than from your own internal processes. Yet intuition is one of the most human experiences we have. It is a reminder that the mind is far more complex and layered than conscious thought alone. Just as dreams reveal emotional truths at night, intuition reveals quiet insights during the day. Sometimes intuition is mistaken for something more dramatic, precognition, or seeing the future. Stories of precognitive dreams, sudden foresight, and uncanny predictions have been told for centuries. They can be emotionally powerful, especially when a dream seems to resemble a later event, or when a feeling aligns with something that eventually occurs. But when scientists study these occurrences, they find gentle explanations rooted in memory, coincidence, emotion, and pattern. Many dreams contain scenes that feel prophetic simply because they draw from common symbols. A dream about losing something may later feel connected to a real loss, not because the dream predicted it, but because both come from the same emotional landscape. Intuition itself can create a sense of foresight when your mind connects subtle clues before your conscious awareness does. You may sense a change in someone's mood before they speak it aloud, or feel a shift in a relationship before any clear sign emerges. These small, natural anticipations can make later events feel predicted. Even coincidence plays a quiet role. Humans experience thousands of moments each day, and occasionally one will align in a way that feels meaningful. If you dream of someone you rarely think about, and they call you the next day, the event will stand out because it is memorable. But the many dreams that do not align with later events fade quietly into forgetting. It is not that precognition is occurring, it is that the human mind naturally remembers the remarkable and releases the unremarkable. Science remains gently skeptical of literal precognition, not dismissive, but cautious. There is no verified mechanism for information to travel backward in time, and the laws of physics as we currently understand them keep causes and effects in a clear order. But the emotional truth beneath the idea of precognition is still meaningful. People long for guidance through uncertainty. They hope for signs that can help them navigate choices, and intuition fills that emotional need in a way that feels almost magical, even when it arises from natural cognitive processes. There is another layer to intuition that deserves attention: the way it guides personal truth. Sometimes intuition is not about external events at all, but about your inner direction. You might feel a quiet pull toward a new opportunity, or a gentle resistance toward a path that does not feel right. These feelings are not random. They often reflect values, desires, and fears you have not fully articulated to yourself. Intuition gathers these unspoken pieces and presents them as a soft emotional signal, one that may not explain itself but which deserves to be heard. This inner intuition can feel like a conversation with a deeper part of yourself, a part that sees the landscape of your life with a wider and softer focus. It does not predict the future, but it helps you navigate the present. And when you look back on the moments when you trusted it, you may find that intuition often led you toward clarity, harmony, or peace. Curiously, when intuition aligns strongly with the later events, it can feel like an echo from another path, another possible version of your life. Not because parallel universes are bleeding into one another, but because the mind is deeply sensitive to possibility. Just as the many worlds interpretation imagines every potential outcome branching into its own timeline, your mind quietly explores many potential outcomes in its own inner world, long before you choose one. Intuition may arise from this inner branching, a soft awareness of which direction aligns most closely with your needs and inner truth. In that way, intuition is not a mystical gift. It is a reflection of your complexity. It is the quiet intelligence of the mind working beneath the surface, noticing what you do not consciously notice, and offering guidance in the form of feelings, images, and gentle impulses. So when you feel intuition rising like a soft tide within you, when a quiet voice suggests caution or curiosity or change, you do not need to interpret it as a message from beyond. You can interpret it as a message from within, from a deeper part of yourself that listens carefully, remembers quietly, and speaks gently. And perhaps the wonder of intuition lies not in its mystery, but in the fact that something so subtle can shape your life so profoundly. Every once in a while you encounter an idea that feels strangely familiar, as though it arrived not from your own effort, but from a deeper place you did not know you were tapping into. It might appear while you're daydreaming, or while taking a quiet walk, or in the soft haze before sleep. Writers, musicians, inventors, and everyday people all describe moments when inspiration seems to descend suddenly, like a gentle wind carrying a thought that feels larger than its origin. These moments raise a question that has lingered through centuries. Where do ideas truly come from? One way to approach this question is through the work of Carl Jung, who imagined a collective unconscious, a kind of symbolic reservoir that humanity shares. He did not describe it as a mystical realm or a literal storage of thoughts, but as a set of universal patterns, recognizable across cultures and eras. You can think of it as a library of images and themes that appear in myths, dreams, stories, and symbols. These archetypes, heroes, guardians, shadows, wise elders, journeys into the unknown, emerge because human beings, regardless of where they live, share similar emotional landscapes. Across time, people have loved, feared, hoped, and struggled in remarkably similar ways, and their stories reflect those experiences. Because we draw from these shared emotional patterns, creativity often converges. When two scientists make the same discovery independently, or when two authors craft strikingly similar plots without ever meeting, it does not require a supernatural explanation. It simply reveals that they are working from the same cultural soil, shaped by the same questions, influences, and human conditions. The universe of human experience is broad, but the paths we walk within it often overlap. History is full of examples. Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace each developed the theory of natural selection while studying far from one another. Isaac Newton and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz each developed a form of calculus without coordinating or sharing notes. These are moments when inspiration seems to bloom simultaneously in separate minds, as though guided by a common thread. Yet they unfold naturally from shared curiosity, shared patterns of thought, and similar observations about the world. Even in quieter creative domains, painting, music, poetry, you can find echoes that move across cultures. Consider how different societies, separated by oceans and centuries, created myths about floods, suns, moons, and the origins of life. Or how many musical traditions gravitate towards similar scales, rhythms, and instruments. These echoes emerge not because minds are connected across dimensions, but because human beings respond similarly to nature, community, and emotion. The world shapes us in parallel ways, and we shape our ideas in turn. Still, there is something deeply moving about the way ideas sometimes feel shared. Creativity can carry a sense of vastness, as though the spark that ignites your imagination came from a place both within and beyond you. Some people describe the experience as a flow, a feeling of being guided by something larger, a sense that the mind has briefly tuned into a current of thought that exists outside the boundaries of everyday awareness. This is not evidence of literal shared consciousness, but it does reveal how easily inspiration can feel like an encounter with something greater. Part of this sensation comes from the way the mind combines memory and emotion. When you create something new, you're not building from nothing. You're drawing on everything you have ever seen, felt, heard, or wondered about. These fragments gather quietly in the background, waiting for the right moment to assemble themselves into something fresh. The result can feel like a gift, because you may not see the steps your mind took to bring the pieces together. The process is hidden, silent, and often intuitive, revealing only the final arrival of the idea. Another part comes from the way social and cultural patterns move through communities. When an idea or theme becomes important to a generation, it appears in many forms at once. Artists paint it, musicians compose it, filmmakers explore it, philosophers debate it. The idea seems to arise everywhere, echoed across creative spaces as though a collective heartbeat were guiding it. In reality, everyone is responding to similar influences: new technology, shifting values, major events, global changes. Still, it can feel like a shared breath of inspiration sweeping through humanity all at once. This sense of shared creativity extends even into dreams. People across different cultures dream of flying, of being chased, of losing their voice, of wandering through endless hallways. These motifs reflect shared emotions: longing for freedom, fear of losing control, anxiety, uncertainty, hope. Dreams are intensely personal, yet broadly universal. They reveal the common psychological threads that weave through all of us, which is why they can feel like glimpses into a shared inner landscape. Some people wonder whether inspiration might come not only from the collective patterns of humanity, but from something deeper, perhaps from the same source that shapes the recurring forms of nature, like the spirals of galaxies and the branching of trees. While science does not support the idea of inspiration flowing from universal consciousness, it does acknowledge that certain patterns emerge naturally in complex systems. Nature repeats itself because the underlying rules remain the same across scale and time. Human creativity, influenced by those patterns, may echo them without realizing it. There is beauty in thinking of inspiration as a shared phenomenon, not in a literal sense, but in the sense that human beings draw from the same emotional wells, the same physical world, and the same quiet mysteries. When you feel the spark of a new idea, you're participating in something ancient, something that has moved through minds for thousands of years. You're stepping into a river of thought shaped by everyone who came before you, and your contribution, however small, adds to the flow. And perhaps this is what makes creativity feel so meaningful. Ideas do not need to come from other universes to feel immense. They feel immense because they connect you to a larger story. The story of being human, of searching, imagining, and reaching towards something unknown. When inspiration arrives like a soft breeze, take a moment to appreciate it. You're not just receiving a thought, you're taking part in a quiet, ongoing conversation between the world and everyone who lives within it. In this way, the wellspring of ideas becomes a shared space, not mystical, but profoundly human. A reminder that even when we create alone, we are never truly separate. We're drawing from the same tapestry of experience, weaving our own threads into a pattern that stretches across cultures, across generations, and across the quiet depths of time. There are moments in life when you pause at the edge of a decision, feeling the world grow unusually quiet around you. It might be something small, like choosing which road to take on an afternoon walk, or something large, like deciding whether to move to a new city, end a relationship, change a career, or begin a journey you've been afraid to take. In these moments, you may sense the weight of possibility, gentle, vast, and strangely beautiful. It is as if life opens into a soft branching of paths, each one carrying its own version of the story you will live next. This sensation is deeply human. It reflects the way our minds perceive choice, not as an abrupt switch between fixed points, but as a river that divides and flows into many streams. You stand at the banks, watching the water spread into quiet channels, each one inviting you in a different direction. And though only one path becomes your lived experience, the awareness of the others remains with you, shaping your imagination, your fears, your hopes, and your sense of who you might become. In earlier sessions, we explored the idea of branching universes in physics, how in some interpretations reality might split into countless versions when possibilities unfold. Whether or not the universe truly behaves this way on a cosmic scale, the metaphor fits beautifully with the landscape of human life. Each choice you make feels like stepping into one branch of possibility. Each road not taken becomes a story you carry quietly in your heart. These unchosen paths are not mistakes or regrets. They're reflections of the depth and richness within you. They represent the many selves you might have been. Navigating the infinite you begins with acknowledging the multiplicity inside your own mind. Within you lives the cautious self, the bold self, the nostalgic self, the curious self, the self who longs for change, and the self who seeks comfort in familiar places. These selves are not separate personalities. They are facets of your inner landscape, shaped by memories, hopes, and the subtle ways you respond to the world. When you face a choice, you're not choosing between simple options. You're choosing between versions of yourself, allowing one of these inner voices to guide your next step. Because of this complexity, decision-making often feels emotional rather than logical. It is not a mathematical optimization problem, nor a straight line from cause to effect. It is a quiet dialogue between these inner selves, each one whispering its own preference. Some choices feel wrong because they silence an important part of you. Others feel right because they harmonize with something deep within. Learning to sense this harmony, this subtle resonance, is part of navigating your inner multiplicity. Mindfulness helps with this process, not in the sense of formal meditation alone, but in the quieter practice of listening to yourself without hurry or judgment. When you slow down enough to notice your thoughts, you may realize that intuition, emotion, memory, and logic all play roles in shaping your sense of direction. You might sense that one path feels heavy, another feels expansive. One feels like shrinking, another feels like stepping forward. These feelings are not trivial. They are signals from within, guiding you toward the version of yourself that wants to emerge. In this gentle exploration, imagining parallel selves can be unexpectedly clarifying. If you picture the version of you who chooses one path and the version who chooses another, you might feel a subtle shift. One image might bring tension, another might bring peace. The imagined futures are not predictions. They are mirrors. They show you how your inner landscape responds to possibility. When an imagined path feels aligned, it often reveals a truth you already knew, but had not yet articulated. This does not mean every path is safe or comfortable. Sometimes the direction that resonates most strongly is the one that feels uncertain, unfamiliar, or frightening. Growth often lives in the branches that stretch outward, where you must step beyond what you know and trust that the ground will meet your feet. These choices are not leaps into voids. They're invitations into new rooms of your own mind, rooms you have not yet visited but have always carried within you. Equally important is the gentle acceptance that not every choice has to be perfect. In a universe filled with possibility, perfection is a mirage. What matters instead is movement, the simple act of choosing a direction that feels honest. Even if you later take another path, even if you change your mind, each step teaches you something about who you are becoming. Life is not a single path to be found, but a tapestry woven from countless small decisions, each one adding texture and nuance to your story. And there is comfort in recognizing that many of your choices are reversible. You can try something new and step back if it does not bring you peace. You can let go of something that no longer serves you and turn towards something that does. You can begin again, not because you failed, but because the landscape within you has changed. You are not a fixed point. You're a moving, evolving being shaped continuously by experience. Navigating the infinite you also means embracing the parts of yourself that feel contradictory. You can be both brave and frightened, both curious and cautious, both tender and strong. These contrasts are not flaws, they are signs of depth. Just as the universe contains both dark matter and starlight, both expansion and gravity, your inner world contains many forces that shape and balance you. Recognizing this balance helps you act not from pressure or fear, but from a place of quiet authenticity. And finally, as you move through life's branches, you may notice a soft truth. You are the thread that ties all these possibilities together. The choices you make are not isolated events. They form a coherent unfolding of your inner narrative. The version of you who exists right now, breathing, listening, wondering, is the result of countless small decisions, each one chosen from a wide field of possibility. This realization does not shrink your life. It expands it. It shows you that every moment is a point of potential, a place where the path can shift gently in a new direction. Perhaps the most tender part of navigating the infinite you is understanding that the future is not something to fear. It is something to step into with curiosity. You're not confined to the person you were yesterday, nor limited to the choices you made long ago. You can change direction at any moment. You can choose courage, forgiveness, creativity, stillness, exploration. The universe of your inner life is vast, and you have permission to wander through it slowly, thoughtfully, and without hurry. In this quiet, expansive way, the infinite you becomes less a philosophical idea and more a lived experience, a reminder that you are always both becoming and beginning, carried forward on the gentle currents of possibility. There are nights when you step outside and feel the sky settling over you like a quiet blanket. The world seems larger than usual, the air a little stiller, and for a moment you sense your smallness, not in a frightening way, but in a gentle, grounding way. In these moments, you may feel the distance between yourself and the stars, the vastness stretching out beyond sight, and yet you might also feel strangely connected to it all. As though the universe, in all its immensity, has room carved out specifically for you. A place where your breath, your thoughts, your memories, and your quiet existence belong just as surely as the light from distant galaxies. This feeling of belonging is subtle. It does not announce itself, nor does it demand belief in anything extraordinary. It is simply an awareness, soft, steady, and comforting, that even in a universe filled with countless stars, you're not an accident or an afterthought. You are a participant in the ongoing story of existence. Theories of multiverses, higher dimensions, and branching timelines can make the universe feel infinitely complex, almost overwhelming. But they can also offer a kind of quiet reassurance. If reality contains many layers, if the cosmos is a tapestry woven from countless threads, then your life, your choices, your presence become part of something vast and intricate. You're one thread, but the tapestry would not be the same without you. This sense of belonging does not come from grandeur. It comes from understanding that the universe, despite its immense scale, is built from simple, repeating ingredients. Atoms that once drifted through ancient stars now form the cells of your body. Elements forged in stellar furnaces now shape your bones, your heartbeat, your breath. The cosmos lives within you, not metaphorically but literally. And in return, you live within it, not as a separate observer, but as a continuation of its unfolding. When you reflect on your place in the universe, you may wonder whether humanity is truly alone, whether the quiet presence of other worlds, other dimensions, or other forms of life might accompany us in ways we cannot yet perceive. Science has not answered this question. It simply points to the vastness of space and whispers that the story is likely larger than we realize. The possibility of a shared multiverse does not diminish your existence. If anything, it highlights how remarkable it is that you are here, in this particular world, experiencing this particular moment. Even if reality branches into countless possibilities, even if there are other versions of you walking different paths, the version sitting here now, breathing gently, listening quietly, is not overshadowed by the others. This version is the one you feel. This version is the one you live. Within the infinite, your lived experience gains weight because it is yours. The choices you make, the kindness you give, the presence you bring into the world, these things anchor you in your own thread of reality. In this way, your life becomes a kind of anchoring point in the cosmic tapestry. You're a location where consciousness gathers itself, where experience takes shape, where meaning arises. And though the universe around you may be vast and unknowable, your inner world has depth of its own, filled with memories, thoughts, dreams, moments of joy, sorrow, discovery, and connection. This inner universe is just as rich, just as real as the galaxies swirling millions of light years away. Belonging does not require certainty. You do not need to know whether parallel worlds exist or whether other universes drift through unseen dimensions. You do not need to solve the mysteries of consciousness or understand the deepest foundations of physics. Belonging arises from something simple and human, the awareness that you are here, experiencing life, shaping your story with each quiet moment. When you think of the multiverse, you might imagine not billions of worlds, but a vast ocean of possibilities. And in that ocean, your world is a small but radiant island. Its shape is determined by your memories, its sound shaped by your heartbeat, its atmosphere warmed by your relationships and your hopes. No other island is exactly like it. Even if infinite possibilities exist, none replace or diminish the one you inhabit. There is a soft comfort in knowing that your life matters, not in a grand cosmic announcement, but in the simple truth that you experience it directly. Your existence fills the space you occupy. Your thoughts influence the world around you in ways both big and small. Your kindness ripples outward. Your presence touches people in ways they may not always express but often feel. And so, in the quiet of night, when you pause to breathe and reflect, your place in the multiverse becomes clearer. You're not lost in a sea of infinite possibilities. You're standing on the shoreline of your own story, watching the waves move gently between past and future, feeling the soft pull of everything that brought you here. Whatever realities may exist beyond this one, whatever layers of existence the universe holds, this reality, the one you are living now, holds meaning simply because you are in it. Your breath warms it, your awareness lights it, your choices carve its path. You are not insignificant, you are not alone, you are part of a vast unfolding tapestry, and your thread, quiet, subtle, irreplaceable, runs through it with purpose. This world, this moment, this version of you, it matters.